Thank you everybody for attending my presentation today. It's titled How SVGs Power Wilson Sporting Goods Product Configurator. My name is Andy Olson and I'm a front-end developer from the Chicago suburbs. I've been working with Drupal since about 2008, but as a front-end developer, worked with a variety of CMSs. I've been on the Wilson Sporting Goods project since 2015. And lastly, a fun fact about me is I'm a musician and played with a band at Lollapalooza. So, love music. But let's talk about my day job. Been at HS2 Solutions going on 8 years. We work with a variety of great clients. We have a great team of Drupal developers in addition to design and UX. We're often hiring, so if you're interested or need good Drupal work, come see me after this. And love to talk to you more about HS2 and what we can do. But really what I'm here to talk about is this really exciting project that HS2 Solutions did with Wilson Sporting Goods. And so I'm going to go over the agenda here. We're going to go over the project goals. It's a very interesting and complex project. We're going to go over the approach of how we solved that problem and the challenges we face along the way. And at the end we'll leave some time for some questions. So the first thing is we had to build a product configurator for Wilson Sporting Goods. If you're not familiar with Wilson Sporting Goods, they make a variety of sports equipment for tennis, football, basketball, but in this case we were to build a product configurator specifically for baseball. So the first thing that this product configurator had to do, it had to be photorealistic. This is from the client. It had to demonstrate multiple colors and styles for a variety of products. It had to allow users to add custom text and upload logos. And we also had to manage a variety of product types. So for baseball specifically, we had baseball jerseys, pants, helmets, batting gloves, and protective gear. So everything that a team needs to get out on the field and look professional and great in all their Wilson gear. The other thing it had to do is it had to support multiple product views. So as they designed it, they needed to be able to see the front, the back, the side to make sure everything was configured to their liking. And lastly, it had to, we wanted to build this for future products we didn't even know about, and for sports. As I said, Wilson Sporting Goods has a lot of different sports. And so as we were building this for baseball, we were keeping an eye on what we'd have to do for basketball and football next. So pretty complex goals and kind of a big charter at the beginning. Not only that, we just had to look at what we were going to build. So let's just take a look at first just baseball jerseys themselves. Wilson has a catalog that they send out to coaches, a yearly catalog. And in that, there's 62 different styles of baseball jerseys and 52 fast pitch jerseys. Those are just the styles that they can choose from. Each jersey has up to 3 color inserts. When I say color inserts, what I'm talking about is down the front of a jersey, as you see here up on the screen, that dark blue is what we consider a color insert. And if you can see on the sleeves, those are stripes. So those are other color inserts. So on average, each style has about 3. Some of them had up to 6 different colors that you could configure and pick. So of those, they could pick up to 33 different color options. So in total, again, I felt really compelled to be at MIT to include some math, right? So got my scientific calculator, I am an electrical engineer, so I pulled it out, wiped off the dust, and that ended up being 3.7 million different combinations for just the jerseys. And so if you're thinking to yourself, we're just going to go through the different styles up here. As you can see, each one has a different feel. And before it was just a paper catalog, and they gave it to the coach and they had to envision what their team would look like. Our goal for this website was to have them play around with it, craft a perfect product to get their team out on the field and looking great, and specifically what they wanted, matching their colors and their logos. So in the past, HS2 had built something with JPEGs. And With color combinations, you can just iterate through combinations and provide those JPEGs. But as you can see, with just jerseys, 3.7 million JPEGs to go through, even a Photoshop script to just kind of go through that in quality control is just not an option. So again, jerseys, not only that, that would just be the front of the jerseys. We also had to show the back and the side of these jerseys. But wait, there's more. We had 3 different styles of pants, 2 different batting gloves. Something you might not know about Olson Sporting Goods, they also have sister companies, which is Louisville Slugger and DeMarini, and Evo Shield. So there's a Louisville Slugger glove, there's a DeMarini glove. For helmets, there's a DeMarini helmet, and protective straps. If you're watching the Red Sox last night, every batter's up, they have those protective armbands, and we have a strap that they can put their name and their number on. So, not only that, just any product that they think of in the future, we want to be able to add it to this. So, obviously, colorizing photography, managing 10 million plus photos, running some Photoshop scripts is just not an option. So, the question is, would vector art suffice? Wilson already designs these jerseys as what they call flats. And so that's what you see up there in the top, the KBC and number 45. That's what they use to design and to actually create them at their factory. But, and also below that, in the catalog, you can see there's been other vector art created, but they didn't encompass all the different styles that they had. And also, they had a previous product configurator that was over here on the left in the dark. But they had about 50 new styles that they needed to add, and they weren't too into the look and feel of this. And as I said before, the very first thing that we had in this project was to make this photo real. So vector art wasn't going to suffice. We didn't have enough of it, and they were like, meh, on how the look of it. They wanted a photo real. They wanted to imagine what that player would look like. So it's not photorealistic, so why not combine photography and vector art approaches together? So that was our big idea. And so our approach was, using photography, vector art, and JavaScript, we can create a photoreal product configurator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that in the 3 different phases here. So I'm going to first talk about how we photographed the products. Next, I'm going to talk about the vector artwork that we drew over top. And third, I'm going to talk about the JavaScript that we used in order to pull off this product configurator. First off, so for photography, we had 3 things that we had to do. Determine our base images. We had to also coordinate a photo shoot and provide art direction at that photo shoot to make sure we had what we needed in order to build this properly. So for base images, as we looked at the catalog, as we looked at all the baseball products we had in front of us, we ended up saying that we had 41 base images. And so what that meant was, for baseball jerseys, we had a full button, we had a 2 button and a pullover, but also for fast pitch, we had some tank tops, cap sleeve. And so what we had to do is we had to find all of those jerseys, and we had to make sure that they were white, without anything on it. And that always seems to be harder than you would think, because they typically just make jerseys with colors on them. So to just get a blank white jersey, we had to first procure those and get those sent to us. And then lastly, we just had to make sure that there was consistent sizes. So whatever they sent, we asked for adult mediums. And in this, we had to sell for adults and for children. But in this case, we just decided to go with adult mediums. Next up was who we chose for to pull off this photography. And in this case, we used a company in the Chicago area called Snap 36. And it's a really cool, excellent company. What they do is they provide a 360-degree spin of the products. This allowed for consistent placement and sizing of the images, And they also offered post-production of the images. So what's really cool about Snap 36 is that they basically have this large turntable in a photo studio with lighting. And what it does is you spin the product and it takes 24 photos. So every 15 degrees, you get a new photo. And so what we did is we got all of our white products, we went to Snap 36 and scheduled a photo shoot. Lastly, while we were there, we had to make sure that we had proper lighting. What we wanted was to reduce the shadows, make sure it wasn't wrinkly. We had to have a nice flat image. And then, as you can see in the picture here, we're pinning the shoulder for a side shot of our mannequin here. What we wanted to do in these silly photos show is that we couldn't have a wrinkle down the front because as the coach would put a logo on it, you would think the impression was that we'd have to do something with that logo or create that wrinkle. And we didn't want to have to do that. We wanted to have it as flat as possible so we didn't have to do anything tricky with the logo. So that was the photo shoot, and at Snap 36. One quick note is that we were going to use their mannequin, but they ended up being too beefy, so Wilson brought their own mannequins, and I will say it was an interesting ride for the person from Wilson having a mannequin in there on the expressway during rush hour. So she did get some strange looks. It was pretty funny. All right, so we had our photography set. Next up was to take that photography and draw vector art. So what I'm going to talk about is that approach about free drawing on top of this photography, how we exported that vector art as SVGs, how we used the multiply filter within SVGs to create this amazing effect, and lastly something we coined the SVG cake, the layered cake of the SVG. So let's go right to it. So what I want to point out here, what you see on the screen is what we ended up as the final photography from that Snap 36 photo shoot. And at the top is that catalog that I talked about that the coach gets. Underneath that is that flat file that Wilson uses to produce the jersey. What we were asking our vector artist to do was to look at the catalog of a mannequin wearing the jersey, look at the flat, and then interpret and free draw over a white jersey. They weren't just tracing it, because tracing would be easy, right? That would mean that we'd have to take each style, each of the 144 styles, put it on the mannequin and spin set it, right? We didn't have that, we just had a white jersey. So it was really difficult to go through this process. So the next couple screens, I'm gonna take you through how we went through that process to draw. So we sent them this and said, have at it, draw one, and let's see what it looks like. They came back with this. Pretty good. Does anybody kind of see it quite yet? Take it in a little bit. If you look at it, they match the shoulder. If we look at the shoulder insert, it's matching a little too close to the jersey laying on the table. It's not bumping out the chest that's on the mannequin. So it's a little too sharp and does not really reflect what's in the catalog. The other thing too is that they drew all that artwork all on one layer. And so it would be really difficult for us to pick apart and color that. The last thing that they did is they punched out the buttons. So we said, awesome, this is pretty close, but let's try it again. Great. They came back again. They separated the colors, so that's great, but if you notice, they forgot to touch the shoulder. Well, imagine that. You know, they did some things, but not all of it. And forgot the buttons. Another email goes back. Hey, they fixed that. They got the buttons. We were so excited, we were jumping around high-fiving. But does anybody see the one minor difference, kind of hard to see? Because we saw it too late. Is the piping down the front is supposed to be matching the same as the sleeves. These were the interesting requirements for Wilson, is that they didn't want any rainbow of colors. Certain selections colored certain parts of the jerseys. So as you can see, that piping down the front had to match the shoulders. So when you get this. And then finally, they just took that artwork and put it on that same layer. So, hooray! 1 jersey done. 143 more to go. And the backs and the side views. Hooray! Hopefully it's not 6 emails every time, right? Let's talk a little bit more about SVGs. So SVGs in Illustrator look like this. But the amazing thing about SVGs is that when you open them up in an HTML editor, they look like that. And what's awesome about that is, as a developer, we can look at that code and start seeing patterns. And we can see how certain artwork is grouped in certain ways. So layers in Photoshop relate to the code in the SVG. So understanding that SVG structure helped us manipulate the artwork to change the color. So that's what you call a spoiler alert for the JavaScript coming soon. All right, so here we have it in Illustrator. So what I'm doing here is just playing a video of turning off the layers in Illustrator. So that's the base layer, that's the color shoulder insert, and finally then the last layer comes on as the shoulders. Awesome. They send it back to us. We have properly layered SVG file in Illustrator. Now, when I look at that code, it looks like this. So let's take a deeper look at it. What I get from that is the layers in Photoshop, in Illustrator. Sorry if I keep saying Photoshop, but correct me, it's Illustrator. The layers in Illustrator become IDs in the SVG file. So I had to make sure that they labeled base was the entire tracing of that product. Color 1 was the punch out of the neck. So black is base. Color 1 is everything that's pink. Color 2 is yellow. And color 3 is green. So those are the IDs, and they're grouped in the code there. So that's what we get. So they're able to draw happily in there. We inspect the code and give the thumbs up, and we're ready to go. So now the next thing I want to talk about with vector files is the multiply filter. It is a powerful, really great filter that you can apply to SVGs, and also you can play around with in Photoshop. So the best analogy of what the multiply filter is, and I want to make sure that multiply filter is not opacity, okay? The best analogy for the multiply filter is to pretend you have an old school slide, and on it is that white jersey that I had. So let's hold that up, and I'm going to hold it up to the light. Then I take another slide that just has my vector artwork on it. And when I hold that closer to my eye, with a jersey behind it, I'm now seeing a colorized jersey behind it. It's not obscuring it, it's coloring it, but I'm still able to see all the detail of that jersey underneath. And so as you can see in this graphic up here, on the left is these layers, and this is in Photoshop in this case, without the multiply filter, and on the right with the multiply filter. Whites just are white. You see the detail of the object behind it. Black is complete obscurity. Everything else in between is the colorizing effect. So this filter was mind-blowing. It was really amazing. We're like, this is it. It's not opacity, because that would obscure it more. It just allowed those colors to pass through and keep all the detail of the photograph underneath. So this is what it looked like when we applied it. So we got that vector artwork, and then as I put that jersey underneath, you're able to see all those details. You're able to see the buttons. You're able to see some of those shadows come through. Really, really powerful filter that any SVG can apply. So let's talk a little bit about how we applied that. I'll show you a little bit of the code here. So what we did is we took all those G group IDs, and we grouped those in a group. And then we gave it an ID and said, hey, we want to add this filter to this group of artwork. And all you had to do was an FE blend and say mode multiply, and it works. We have photorealistic. What I want to last talk about is the SVG cake. Okay, so at the bottom layer, at the very bottom, is that white product image. So you can see it's just a glove with nothing on it. It's a white DeMarini batting glove. The next one above it is that vector artwork that they drew, and we had to painstakingly go through what is on what layer and what could be colored. And lastly, that topmost layer is a transparent PNG. This allows us, we could either use this transparent PNG to add that shadow pattern that was applied here, but we could also add some more texture or some shadows. If they wanted more detail, if that color, if the vector and the multiply didn't add enough depth to it, we could always just put a transparent PNG over top and it just adds more depth to it. So what we're doing is just creating this SVG file that's completely self-contained, has some filters applied to get those colors to come through, and then adding more layers, more icing, more details on top of that cake. Really, really powerful stuff. We're jumping around high-fiving. But the work wasn't done yet. We had the file, we had everything ready to go. Now we had to manipulate those colors. So what I'm going to talk about is the JavaScript. How we update those path fill colors, how we insert text, numbers, and logo, and how we had to, special cases like where we moved buttons, and we'll talk about that. So first off here, instead of the full application, we made this thing called the Customizer Lite, just to get it in the browser. I'm a big fan of getting things in the browser fast to work through a lot of these details, so it's not just a big bang at the end. So we made this Customizer Lite, and on the left you're going to see the color swatches, and as I said, color 1, color 2, color 3. The middle, there's the SVG, and on the right is just the HTML code. So let's walk through it a little bit. So first off, the most important thing to see here is that the jersey is an SVG and it's just inline. So I've just taken that SVG file and dumped it in an HTML file. We didn't use the object tag, and there's reasons for that I'll go into later, but just for now, just understand that that SVG file is just dumped right into that HTML page, okay? And as we saw, it spat out IDs. So we have ID base and color 1, yada yada. Next up, we just have these different unordered lists of our color swatches. So I just call the first one with a class of color picker 1. Next up, each swatch inside of there is going to have a data hex color. In this case, this is for the cardinal color. There's cardinal, scarlet, maroon, all the fancy names that you want to call a color. But we use a data attribute and called it data hex color. And this is it. This is the JavaScript that we had to write to pull this off. So really quickly walking through it, as first is just a click event on that color picker for a color swatch. So this is going to fire for any color swatch clicked in color picker 1. Next up, it's going to grab whatever that data hex value is for that event. And lastly, we just go to the container that contains that jersey color. We find that ID, that's color path, the color underscore 1. And in that SVG file, it's just a path. What am I thinking of? Not tag. It's a path. And we use CSS fill to just update that hex value. That's it. It's colorized. They're able to pick those colors. And what's cool about it is that's inline, and that SVG in that page is self-contained. It knows now that it's cardinal colored. Next up, the next part of the JavaScript we had to do was to insert custom text, numbers, and logos. So that isn't that much harder, right? We take G groups of the artwork, and we just insert them on the fly in the correct order, and the order of the SVG matters. So if I wanted to put a logo on the front of the jersey, I just take a G group, I rasterize that logo, and I just insert it into the SVG, and bam, I'm able to place that right on the jersey. So what does that look like? Well, here it is. So these are just G groups that as they uploaded a logo, in this case a front logo, it gets inserted into that SVG file. So they're able to add a number, and so we have to insert that. Shoulder logo, as you saw, front logo, and a brand logo. And the other things that it allows you to do too, it's kind of hard to see on here, but you're able to skew it if we really needed to. If it was a different angle, we might have to skew that logo. But we made sure in our photo shoot everything was front and center. We didn't have to skew any logo. We could also rotate it. As you see, the Wilson logo on the shoulder is rotated. So we just do that in that G group and say rotate it so many degrees. Really that simple. The last part of the JavaScript is we had this requirement where if they had a full chest logo, the buttons move. So if you're watching the Red Sox last night, they have 2 buttons here. It says Red Sox, and then the rest of the buttons down below. If they were traveling, they would have a B over here, and then just be the regular buttons like what I'm wearing here. So the buttons move. We didn't photo shoot those, but it's very easy to do in Photoshop. We just took all the buttons off of a jersey, and then we made a transparent PNG, placed them exactly where they should be, and add that as a topmost layer of our SVG cake. And then we wrote JavaScript code to toggle between the two. So as you can see here, we have a logo across the front of the chest, and so that button had to move, so we just load that PNG file. If we go to the other one, the logo moved to the side, we just load the other PNG that has the straight buttons. Again, this SVG cake becomes really powerful. It's able to, with very simple JavaScript, to show and hide, and having the right assets, we were able to create this really photoreal final product view. So just really quick to recap the approach. First and foremost was that photo shoot, getting organized, finding all the products that you have. The next part was that vector art production and those iterations to make sure you're getting a great representation of that product. The visual QA and feedback, the technical QA feedback from that vector art. Finally implementing into the product configurator to make sure all the code works and getting it in the browser as fast as possible. That should just be my t-shirt and or tattoo. Get in the browser fast. QA fast, and that was it. And it all sounds so easy. Womp womp. Challenges, lots of them. I already touched on a few of these, but let's go over just a handful of them. So base images, I'll go through a little bit more about that. The feedback QA, I've already touched upon some of those challenges. Performance, and lastly, I'm sure you've never heard this on any project you've ever done. But wait, there's this one project is a little bit different. Wait, there's this exception. Wait. So handling a lot of those exceptions and doing acrobatics. That's what we do. So first off, finalizing base images. Things that I know now that I wish I knew then was we spent a lot of time on post-production. We spent a lot of time creating a beautiful white jersey. So we went through post-production thinking that this jersey on the left was amazing. When we added that vector artwork, guess what? It just looked like vector artwork. There was nothing interesting about it. Because it was so flat and perfect, we might as well have just done this in vector art and just called it a day. So if you look at the one on the right, first comment was, that looks dirty, that looks messy. But when you add the styles to it and you start adding logos to it, nobody's shopping for a white jersey. They're shopping for the logos, and your eye goes to those different places. So it was really hard to manage and go through this. So if I had to do this over, that process was painful to have shadows and texture conversations. The other thing that we're actually testing right now is starting with a 50-50 gray jersey, because when you start with white and you play with the levels, white has nowhere else to go. And if you blow it out, it's just even more white. But with gray, you can colorize it and you have some more room with shadows. So you could even play in Photoshop with the shadows to bring things up or pull things back. But with white, we just run out of runway. The other option, another gentleman at Wilson came up with the idea of, he'd had success with a scarlet jersey, and I guess scarlet provides really rich depth texture. So we're also going to try and shoot, we're going to do a test shoot with a gray jersey and a scarlet jersey, just to see if we have more play with our shadows and our textures. So that's to be seen here coming in the fall. But definitely don't overproduce, and it's difficult to manage. That's too messy. Product images, conversations with them. Because it's their baby, they want it to look perfect. But the vector changes the game when it's in the browser. Oh, the silly things you make when you're QAing and communicating with vector artists. So this is an actual image I sent, trying to say how each thread needs to be on that lavender color layer. And again, over communicating, sending visual examples back and forth, is they had to trace in Illustrator each thread and make sure it was on the proper layer, because when they choose that purple strap, whatever that strap is, it has to change the thread color. That's just how they make it. That's how it comes over from the factory. So, as I said, you have to have a keen eye, you have to have strong coffee, and you have to know these products in and out to know that, oh, maybe this thread, or I missed this thread, or wait, is it supposed to match the pink of the back of the glove? So you have to get really intimate with these, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of emails, a lot of conversations. Imagine this, you miss a few, it gets by you, and then going back and correcting. So that feedback loop and managing that process. We actually had a full-time producer that helped with that, because while I was intimate with these projects, I was also coding and working on the site. So we had a person completely dedicated to managing the assets, managing the feedback, and going through that. She was amazing and essential, and just another part of your brain that you didn't have to use while you were working through this project. Performance. So this is kind of it in action. So when we first got this, as I said, we wrote this in JAVASCRIPT. So upon load, the page was loading with just white jerseys. And then the JavaScript had to come into the page, and then colors would come onto the jersey, and then logos would come onto the jersey. Well, that wasn't a great experience. You know, having this all in the JavaScript seemed like a really great idea, but we were using Drupal. We had the opportunity of taking these SVGs and putting them inline in the template. And imagine this, the site knew the team's colors. There's steps that are before this where the coach picks that they have red or blue, and they're also able to upload their logos. Well, Drupal already knows that. And so for performance, we were able to take this grid and the wow factor of a coach coming in by saying, oh, I'm red and blue. Wow, look at all these jersey combination choices. This is much better than a static catalog that I have to imagine that yellow Kings jersey. I'm able to actually see different styles and different colors for my team. So from a performance standpoint, we were able to take all those colors and the logos and on page load, have them in the page. We still have the flash where the logos and the numbers come in, but not having a white jersey and then all of a sudden it flashes in color come in. We also didn't want to hide it from them and then have them all come in. So from a performance standpoint, adding those colors and baking them into the PHP, into the template as it loads, was huge for visual and for just the JavaScript performance. The other thing that's going on, I'll just play it again. As you can see, I'm clicking these buttons. So each one of those squares are 3 SVGs. So I'm toggling between a full button, a 2 button, and a pullover. Those are 3 separate SVGs that are colored consistently. So this page is actually loading 36 SVGs. If you can imagine the JavaScript going through and updating, it takes time for it to touch all those. So that was, again, another reason for the performance and why it was a great improvement. Other challenges was fonts. So we had all these different variety of fonts that they could use to type on. And anybody here know about fonts and that letter sizing and consistency varies between them? And kerning and space, it was hard. And there's also these arrangement effects. So they could have it straight. They could also do a vertical arch. So we inherited, we didn't write the font part of this, but we did inherit was the fact that Vegas was 3 times larger than Tipolo. And so we had to actually go through the character set and painstakingly make sure they were sized consistently. And again, the silly things you make is you're troubleshooting and going through the project. So that's what you're seeing here is we're just trying to play with the different offsets and understanding the fonts. The other interesting thing about the fonts too is that they could have 3 colors, so solid. They could have an outline around them and then another outline. So it got really interesting with some of these fonts where the different strokes around fonts again was just a challenge. So fonts are hard and were definitely a challenging part of it. In the end, we just rasterized it and jammed it into the SVG, but getting it just right and matching what they actually produce out of the factory was a definite thing. So if you take on a product configurator, the first question is, could they type it and what fonts, and get ahead of that fast. I kind of touched on this before, but how we had the original glove and then they could add a shadow pattern and then they can pick 2 different colors of the shadow pattern. So what we did is we had to make yet another group and then add more vector artwork to it. So this is one of the exceptions, like, oh yeah, by the way, they can add a pattern and pick different colors. So you just kind of hold on for the ride some days. And the good news is the SVG cake allowed for these exceptions, and we had already kind of figured out how the file should be structured. So, surprise handled. Same with the helmet. Oh, by the way, it has to be glossy. So you scratch your head and go, we have flat artwork, what can we do? Transparent PNG. So we take this image on the left, which was actually a colleague of mine in our HS2 offices in Chicago, taking a picture in her office, and those are the windows from the HS2 office. And so as you see, I sent that to the artist, and as I rotate it around, now I'm adding the PNG on top. HS2 windows are now on a Dean Rainey helmet to show off the gloss. So again, it's kind of interesting how you get that requirement and you take a picture, and next thing you know, the windows for your office are on a helmet. Pretty interesting. But again, another challenge, how we had to handle that. So in wrapping up here, this is actually the site. It's the Wilson Team Shop. So you can go to wilsonteamshop.com, take a look at it, play around with it. The next link is something that I wish I knew. The next 2 links are things that I wish I knew before the project started. One is a configurator database. It's a wonderful site that it's a company in I believe Germany has it, and you can send configurators to them, but it's thousands of examples of configurators by industry, and they sort and they just have it, so you can just go and take a look. Cars, sports equipment, it's just a great resource to just kind of surround yourself with a bunch of different configurators, and it's not as anecdotal. It's a really good collection of them. And I can't stress enough the Smashing Magazine article that came out, I believe in February, about designing a perfect responsive configurator. Oh my, that would have really helped our process. It's a wonderful article. It's a really long article, but it forces you to ask really good questions. And I feel it does a great job setting expectations, because as a developer, we get in our developer mode about how it has to work. And as Dries kind of touched upon and others have touched upon this week, is we forget about that user. We forget about that person that's actually going to use it. We forget that it's a coach in Wisconsin just looking to get his Little League team out on the field looking consistent and cohesive. We did all these great tricks, but if we leave him behind, the site's not usable. So they have a bunch of great tips about that approach. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did you run into any browser compatibility issues with Multiply, for example?
The question was, did we run into browser issues with Multiply? And the answer is a few. There's a few tricks. The Multiply filter works in IE 10 and above, and we were lucky that we were able to support IE 10 and above. We ran into, the biggest thing with the Multiply filter that we found was that if it was hidden on load, the filter wouldn't be applied. So as you saw in that example about a full button, 2 button, if that 2 button was actually displaying none, the DOM couldn't see that SVG, and so the filter was not applied. So that one caused us to scratch our head for a while. But overall, browser support has been really good and consistent with it. Another thing that I'll touch on with browser is we also could have done this with Canvas, but that would have just been more JavaScript on top of it. And what we wanted is we wanted a fully self-contained SVG that we could actually ship to Drupal. And then we could also ship to ImageMagick and just create a PNG out of that. But so Canvas was another option. Canvas has wide support, but Canvas uses its own Multiply filter. So that was another head scratcher for us as well. But we had really good luck, other than the hidden Multiply thing, and browser support has been surprisingly really good. Sure.
How much time did you feel that you saved while you're using a lot of time to do the coding, as if you were to just do the complete illustration and then make an SVG out of it, like, so, meaning you'd have to do all the varieties in Illustrator.
That's a great question.
Is there just so many that it's just ridiculous?
Yes, yeah. That was a slide. I don't know if you came in late, but the slide was, the question was, why not just do this all as vector artwork in Illustrator and go through all those different combinations? And just for jerseys alone, it was about 3.7 million different types of combinations.
It's worth figuring out then.
It is, because that was 144 styles, 3 colors with 33 color options for each color. So that's a lot of SVG files. So as you saw, the JavaScript coding is really basic. It's basic DOM manipulation once you have the file structured properly. So the coding wasn't difficult. It's very basic.
And is that affected in any way by what people are viewing it on? Like you said, a coach in Wisconsin, he's probably looking at it on a pretty basic computer, but it doesn't matter, does it?
No,
Yeah.
it's again performance. It loads pretty fast. It's not terribly laggy. We've had pretty good luck with performance. Yeah.
This may be really simple once you get past the initial setup, but I'm just kind of wondering how you register the overlays, the layers of the cake so that they were in the right place. Like,
Excellent question. Yes. So what we did is we had that, we had a high-res Jersey image, and so that was 3,000 by 3,000 pixels. So it was a square. We knew that it was that square, and the Jersey was placed right in the middle. And so what the artist did is they imported that image into Illustrator and used that as their canvas size. And so that's how they drew that vector artwork. So there was no like, just draw it and then we'll place it kind of. It was always a 3,000 by 3,000. So back to that DeMarini shatter pattern. So that also is on the 3,000 by 3,000, just placed exactly where it needs to be. So it's a great question, and same with the buttons too. The buttons aren't just a small file, it's on a 3,000 by 3,000 canvas. So we base everything off of that.
but the PNG file itself is small, like not 3,000 pixels.
It's actually 3,000 by 3,000, so we can just place it over top. But if you think about the file size, 3,000 by 3,000. The vector art is drawn at 3,000 by 3,000, and then that can be shrunk down. We optimized each image to 960 by 960. Sorry. The point was we drew at high fidelity and then ran our images optimized at 960 by 960. Yep. Any other questions? Well, great. Thanks for your time. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about this. This was a really fun, really hard project, and got a bigger brain on the other side of it, and hope you learned something about SVGs along the way. I know I did. Thanks.